Hi my friend, in this video we're going to make a tech house song inspired by Cloonee and Greg's song, Still My Baby. And we're going to find out if we can do this in under 6 hours by using the 80-20 rule of tech house music production. What you're listening to right now is the song that we'll be working on. And what you're looking at now is the Ableton project file that we'll be working on. We'll be going through each layer in the original order I followed when making this, so that we'll be covering the drums, bass, melodic elements, and the final structure, so that you can follow along yourself when making a song like this. Stick around to the end of the video for a full recap of the 80-20 rule so you can apply everything you learn in this video as quickly as possible to your own productions. Because all in all, this song only took me around 6, maybe 5 or 6 hours to finish, and as you can see, it's fully arranged, mixed, mastered, and ready to be used in DJ sets and sent out to record labels. So if you want to finish songs faster, just like this, I've made you a free bundle of templates, samples, and special bonuses that I use to completely finish one song like this every single week. Just visit the link that's on screen now or in the description to grab your copy of the Ultimate Song Finishing Toolkit for free. And if you want to take things to the next level, you can also find a link to this video's project files, as well as over 30 full project files based on tracks from the Beatport Top 100 charts, with new files being added weekly. Let's jump into this. So there are 3 things that I do whenever I start a new song to make sure that I'm starting it with confidence, knowing that it's going to turn out being really great. First is to choose a reference track. So in this instance, we're doing Cloonee and Greg song Still My Baby. And the reason I picked it is because it's in the Beatport Top 10 charts and it sounds cool. And the key of it is D minor and the BPM is 128 BPM. I got this from Beatport. Now, once I have the reference track figured out, I like to pick a remix track or something that's going to be the main hook of my track that's different from the reference. This way, as you're building out the track, you're also building out the layers with that new hook in mind. And this stops you from totally just fully copying the reference track too much and allows you to have something at the end of the day that you can actually release, and that something is a little bit more original. In this instance, I use A Touch of Class's song Around the World, and I looked up the key, which is A minor, and the BPM, which is 132 BPM. So once you have the reference and the remix, the third part kind of happens naturally, or it should happen naturally. And that third point is to have a relationship between these two. So in this instance, the BPM is pretty close, so that's good. If the BPM is too far, you might be stretching something up too high or too low and might sound unnatural and just not work. And having something relationship with the key. So D minor and A minor are different keys, but in the circle of fifths, they have a relationship, and so they share quite a few similar notes. So knowing this information is going to make it so that when you're building out your track, you have you can produce with intention, knowing that you have a lot of it figured out already. And before we jump into Ableton, there's 3 secrets to 80-20 producing that I want you to keep in mind. The first is to set up your reference track in the DAW so that you can flick back and forth between that track and what you're building to make your decisions. And there are 3 particular things that you want to pay attention to that are going to be those things that are 20% of the effort that get you 80% of the result for each of the layers. And that's first looking at the pattern, then the sound selection, and then just the volume. And lastly, the third real key here is to save in time and effort by using one knob Ableton racks to kind of create your own channel strips and make things a lot quicker. So there is going to be a link in the description to a playlist here on YouTube that goes over a bunch of these things. And then also this project file page here that we've been looking at. There's links all throughout it with a bunch of tutorials that you can check out. This is actually free for anybody who is on the list. So if you grab that free Ultimate Song Finishing Toolkit, you'll be able to see these project files for each one of the videos that I make. Just the only difference is you won't be able to actually download the project files unless you join the membership. But with that said, still super powerful, useful stuff. I'd love for you to check it out. And let's jump into Ableton now. All right, so this is a look at the Ableton project file that we're going to be going over. What I have is this, the actual, the vocal here. So I'll just show you what that sounds like real quick. In terms of any processing here, I was playing around with the auto shift but didn't use it. We're just removing a bit of the lows. I'm using this awesome compressor plugin where it'll like listen to the sounds and create the settings for you, because I'm not super into dialing in compressors. We have a little bit of one knob sidechain, so it's pumping. This is all part of the template that you can grab as well, and then a little K clip to just cut off some of the clips. Nothing, or the tops of the transients there, so that we're reducing the dynamic range so we can end up with a louder master. Nothing too crazy going on the vocal here. Main thing is I do love like having this in here with the reference and then playing them over top of each other at the beginning phase that I was showing you. So like this process here, when I'm just first kind of figuring out what I want to work with, I'll actually have it in the DAW here and listen to how they kind of sound mashed together to get that first hint of, okay, this is working. And I have the confidence to push forward with this combination, knowing that it's going to be worthwhile. It's a really, really strong tip that I've been really, really digging in the last little while. But then after that, it's really simple. We're just going to go layer by layer as how I actually built it out. I always start things off with a kick, and the pattern looks a little something like this, and the kick sounds a little something like this. Oh, let me solo it. So the way that I found this kick is I've been using this really cool new plugin called, let me show you what this looks like. Actually, it's called Drum Clone. And it is honestly really, really sick. So what it looks like is this. And basically it's very similar to what I've been showing in previous videos. What you can do is you can grab a kick from the song that you're referencing, you drop it in here, and it does a really good job of extracting the kick. And so what's cool then is what I have here is, in this instance, I have two versions. And this one. They sound kind of similar, I would say, and it really extracts the kick nice. And then what you can do from there is then do that similar sound function. So you can right click it and change into similar, or you can open it up here and do show similar files, which is a new thing I noticed in the new Ableton update. So before you had to go show in browser, then click it from the browser to show similar files. Now you can just do it right here, which is really good. I think I might be talking too fast. Let me slow. So this is a really nice way to extract the kick. And then you have a really clean kick that you can use in your tracks, and a really clean kick that you can use to have the similar sound functionality, do an even better job of finding you some similar sounds like this within your own library. So really cool stuff. But then other than that, it's like the 80-20 rule that we'll have a recap at the end. First, you want to get the pattern down. Then you want to get the sound selection down. And then it's all about just dialing in the volume so that it's similar to the reference track by flicking back and forth. Some additional processing that I did do is I added some drum bus, but the dry wet is only very lightly being added here. So it's kind of like a parallel processing, beefing it up a little bit, nothing too crazy. Then the next element that I've been adding is the rest of the drum. So let's take a look and listen to the next element. So basically this process is just all about I find drums is a really good place to start. But as you're building out, listen to what you hear as the most important element and then work on that one next. So for me, that was this open hi-hat. So let's have a listen to that. So it's a very, very tight open hi-hat, but almost even barely an open hi-hat. And the way that in terms of the pattern, it's just the offbeat, and I set up the template so it's automatically going to have these placed here. Like open hi-hats are almost always in this position, so why punch them in each time? And I have basically two layers for the sound. So what I did for the sound is this first one. So with this, what I did is I just stole the sample from the reference track. And something I did here too is, if you see here, it says split by Lala. What I did is I separated out I dropped the reference in, and then I also stem separated it. So I had one file that was the drums, and then I had one file that was all the melodic stuff. And this allows me to get the snatched little samples from the drums a lot cleaner and easier. And also you can use it as a way, as you're referencing the track, to hear all the elements a lot closer and in more detail, because you're hearing it isolated, which is really, really useful. Other than that, I stacked that up with another sound. I'd use the similar sound feature on the one that I extracted to find something similar to layer up. Then we're just removing some lows, using this transient shaper to pull down the sustain. If you want to see more about this standard channel strip, this one will be in the video that's in the playlist, but also this one here that goes over the template. And then that's a look at the open hat. The next thing I added in was these closed hats. So let's take a listen and look at this. So basically what this is in terms of the pattern, again, that standard kind of offbeat pattern, kind of layering up the open hat sound. This is a good, what would you say, a like transition or structuring technique, arrangement technique Because you can pull the open hi-hat and you still have that driving hi-hat sound, and it also kind of is nice to layer up the open hat sound. It sounds nice. Other than that, this pattern is a couple little shuffly little extra bits you can see going on here, and then just 16th notes with like pulled down quite a bit in terms of the velocity. And then I've also dragged the probability down in terms of the velocity as well, so that way they're kind of hitting different velocity levels and kind of creating that humanization kind of sound and feel. In terms of the sound design, I just used some of the stuff from my normal. I have a little template here with a bunch of closed hat sounds that I've cultivated that usually I kind of like, so I went with those. Again, more in that video right here, if you want to check that out. In terms of any processing, we're just dropping down the volume, or removing the lows, making space for the kick of the bass, dialing back the attack a little bit so it's not hitting so hard. And then dialing back the sustain so it's a little bit of a tighter sound. Again, let's move on to the next element that I was hearing, which is this shaker. Let's bring up the volume so you can hear it. And so let's see if there's anything interesting going on here. Nothing too crazy. So basically just found like a cool shaker loop on splice, I believe. And then just remove some of the lows, a little bit of sidechain so it's pumping and making room for the kick. And then main thing again, just dialing in the volume. Next element is this snare. And so for the snare, it's just going on the 2 and the 4, the 2 and the 4. Again, I set up the template so this is already here with the MIDI for this specific element, because it's almost always happening in these positions. In terms of the sound design, just flicked back and forth between the reference and what I got here until I found one from my pre-selected little library. So I'm not digging through hundreds of samples. I'm digging through whatever this is, 8 or 9. And then just a little tiny bit of processing, removing some lows. That's really it. Main thing is the volumes. Next thing, layering that up with some claps. So let's take a look and listen to that. So again, same thing, it's on the 2 and the 4, just like the snare. So I've set up the template so it's already like this, and then I just doubled it up. Because something nice with claps is, let's see which elements. What I've done is, one is panned 22 to the right, and the other one is panned 28 to the left. So it's kind of, the snare is down the middle, and the claps are on the left and right, giving that width and kind of vibe. And then there's a little bit of something going on here. So what I've just done is dragged back the ending point, and then reduce the fade out. And this is just a way to make that clap sound tighter and not ring out as much. Which I think something similar with this other clap shot here as well. And then other than that, we're just removing a bunch of the lows, tightening up some of the sustain with the transient designer again to further make those claps sound tight, and a little bit of saturation to add some extra harmonics. So it's going to make it sound a little fuller, and a little bit of grit as well. It gets added to it as well. It kind of makes it stand out a bit more in a way. The next thing I added was this bongo loop. And this is how the full loop sounds. It's kind of cool. Just looking for like a bongo loop on splice, and then I cut it up a little bit, just the part that I wanted. It's panned a little to the left, and then for some reason, I've been really interested in the auto shift because I like the idea of like bending samples to your will in terms of like the what key it's playing. So I think it was playing like it sounded a little different. I think if we play it, I'm not really hearing too much of it, to be honest. I thought maybe I heard like there was a very tonal sound going on in the bongo, and I was trying to make sure that it was in line with the rest of the track so it didn't sound off key. But other than that, we're just removing a bunch of the lows, a little side chain so it's pumping, nothing too crazy. And then we have this next bongo element. And turn it up. So this is just kind of, I found another bongo loop on splice, cut it up a little bit so it's more playing what I wanted it to play, removing some lows, sidechain so it's pumping, and then I laid it on this tops element. And turn it up. And I've kind of mentioned this in other videos, but I really love adding in some kind of tops element like a break or a topper loop or something like that. but doing it after you kind of built out your core sounds. So we have these core sounds that we've done mostly with our own MIDI and our own samples from our own sample library. And then we're layering in a top sound like that to add a little bit more character and humanization and like flair to it, essentially. But that's a pretty good look at the drums. So next, let's kind of go over the next elements here. So I'll just solo this stuff out so we're listening. And actually, this is a listen to the drums all on their own. Cool. So that's pretty sweet. Now let's go over the bass. So let's have a listen to this. So look at the MIDI. So for this, basically, it's a very standard technique that I do quite a bit, so I won't go into it too much. Basically, I have this bass group here, and I dragged the reference track audio into this layer here, so it does the audio to MIDI. And then I have a sub layer, and the trick is to build the sub layer first. So you are creating the low end, and then adding in a mid bass layer after for a bit more character. And then also with the sub, adding in a bit of drive and saturation, so you're filling out that low mid range. That's basically how this works. In terms of the key, I just made sure that over here up the top I had the key set up so that I'm kind of playing within the notes. With Ableton 12, you can see I have these like it'll show the key notes, so I'm trying to keep it within that, and then just flicking back and forth between this and the reference to try to get it to sound right. And then once that's good, playing it all with the new hook, so this a touch of class thing, and then adjusting the notes further to make it work really well with the hook. This is super important. I'd spend almost like the craziest amount of time on this, making sure you have a good hook, you've built out your drums nice, and then having the bass sound really good. That's going to really be the foundation for the track. If you want to learn more about this bass kind of situation here, I believe it is somewhere in here. It'll be in the playlist as well. I should definitely add it to here. But there's a system that I've made, like a video that explains this bass system fully. There's a lot of cool tricks in there and a bit more theory about how it's set up and why it's set up like that. So definitely check that out. And now let's just quickly go through the melodic elements. So let's have a listen. Let me just turn everything off and we'll go through it real quick. So the first thing that I added was this kind of Tommy thing. Let's have a listen. Let me turn it up. Actually, yeah, let me turn up the volume. It's almost like boom, boom. Very like kind of tribal sounding kind of thing going on there. The next element I added was this. Let's turn up the volume. So it's almost like a little bass accent that's being added. I did something weird with this. I used Synthplant, so I dragged a section of the song, the reference in here, where the bass was playing, to get this to use AI to kind of create a similar sound, and then just played around with it. So I removed some of the lows to make room for the actual bass and the kick. A little auto pan so it's moving around. Play with the attack and the sustain so it's not hitting as hard and it's tighter, and a little bit of saturation to make it come out a little bit more. Next element I added was this weird little glitchy thing. Turn it up all the way. So you hear those weird little glitches. Basically I just found a cool little glitch loop on Splice. And then what I did is remove some of the lows, and then I removed a bunch of the attacks so it's not hitting as hard. I didn't want the glitches like really poking out too much. I wanted it to be more subtle, like more background kind of little cool effect. And the next thing I added was this, which I think is sick. And so this is doing like I grabbed the song, a touch of class around the world, dragged in that intro, so it did audio to MIDI to get the notes, and that pretty much got the notes perfectly. And then in terms of the sound design, and I guess I could show you the notes real quick too. It's like a little ARPy kind of thing. Right there. This is pretty unedited. I think I might have tightened up some of the lengths, but mostly I just use that audio to MIDI feature. And then for the sound, I found a section of the song where the Cloonee song is playing like that little synth in it, and I used a similar sound feature, and it actually showed this like conga with like that was hitting an F4 tone. So I dragged the conga in, switched it to a sampler, and then changed the root to F so that it knows that this original sample is an F, and that way the notes that I play, it'll switch it so it's in key. Other than that, a bunch of removing some highs and lows so it's kind of blending in more, standard channel strip stuff, and then we'll move on. I think that's kind of most of the stuff I want to show actually on this one. I added some extra pads that really aren't part of the tune, and some house strings. If you want to take a look at the project files, it will be available, link in the description, or bestfriendsclub.ca/join. All right, and so once you've built out your track vertically, layer by layer, it can make it really, really simple to finish the track when you follow a couple of these little tips here that are on the project file page. So one is having a structure track built out against your reference. So then you can just kind of copy and paste it along your DAW and listen to the reference track and take note of these bigger song section changes to guide your structure as a good starting point. So that's the idea there, using that structure track with empty MIDI clips, split monitoring, so flicking back and forth, and then finally just adding on some transitions and effects can be a really nice way to add that like finishing touch and polish to your structure. On this page, there's the detailed tutorials on each of these little steps here, and then the final finishing process here to actually know when your song's finished. One is the 3 things rule, just making sure you pick 3 core things that you want to focus on. 80-20 mixing, so trying to just get to that 80% mark, not going too much further than that, doing the 20% of things that are going to get you 80% of the results. A lot of that is mixing as you go using the one knob effects and stuff like that we were showing just a bit earlier. And then lastly is just a quick mastering chain, which I'll get a video of up on that soon as well. And yeah, you can get access to this project page for free if you join the Ultimate Song Finishing Toolkit there, if you grab that for free. And then also this and all of these other project files with new ones being added weekly are available as well if you want to join that as well. With that said, let's move into the 80-20 rule to recap everything here.
Hi, my friend, Matt from Best Friends Club here. And if you've been paying attention to this super long video, then you've probably figured out what the 80-20 rule is when it comes to building out your songs. The goal here is to get 80% of the result with only 20% of the time, energy, and effort. And because the first key to the 80-20 rule here is to use a reference track, we're making sure that we're very easily hitting 80% of a high quality, professionally made song. In particular, we use that reference track to make sure that we're picking the right notes, sounds, and volumes as we're building out our song. The second key of the 80-20 rule here is to mix as you go in an extremely streamlined way by only focusing on the volume of each track, as well as using a simple repeatable channel strip for each track that we're adding to our songs. The third and final key is to repurpose your old project files and have a suite of powerful templates, Ableton racks, and one knob effects that you've personalized and curated over time. If you'd like to get a head start by downloading all the racks, templates, and all the files that you've seen me use in the Ableton project file for this video, or if you'd just like to take a closer look at any of the techniques or tracks you saw me work on in this video at your own pace, you can find a link to this video's project files on screen now and at the second link that's in the YouTube description. I'm recreating a different song from the Beatport top charts every single week and making the project files available to anyone who wants them. You'll also get access to a private Discord where you can ask me and the community questions, as well as share tracks for feedback. If you or your music are not quite ready for a shot in the arm like that, I've also made you a completely free bundle of templates, samples, and special bonuses that have helped me figure out how to completely finish one new song each and every single week. And you can grab that free Ultimate Song Finishing Toolkit by visiting the first link that's in the YouTube description here. However, if you just feel like staying on YouTube for now, that's totally fine. Save that link for later and check out this playlist filled with videos just like the one you just watched, where I completely create songs inspired by tracks found in the Beatport top charts. Or if you really want to take what you've learned in this video to the next level, make sure you check out this video right here.